The policy of the opposition is vigilantism. They are coming up here and they are advocating taking the law into their own hands because they suggest that the state is not possible of protecting women. They don't just give up on the state in their cases that they're trying to bring for you tonight. What they're doing is they're giving up on justice, law, and the system in which we hope that all crimes can successfully be prosecuted, adjudicated, and convictions can be delivered. Now, Adina comes up here and she says to you that revenge is a policy that the state should support. The code of eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth, arm for an arm is something that the state should support because of a hypothetical psychological condition. Now, I'm going to come up here and I'm going to do three things. The first thing I'm going to do is by saying that vigilantism is never something that should be supported by any organ of the state because it delegitimizes the law. The second thing that I'm going to do is all the mitigating factors that they came up here and tried to present to you conflict exactly with what Ohad and Ati said, but going even beyond that, the analysis I'm going to bring to you is going to be saying how it's going to act as an impetus and a gateway to justifying other crimes of so-called needs. And the third thing that I'm going to do for you is I'm going to bring a clear and clever actor analysis which will show you the relationship between the batterer, between the battery, and the state, and how using NOKED's 6 points of isolation, they actually go against and don't do anything to support their case and only further justify ours to rid the state of this is a possible defense for murder perpetrators. Now the first thing is a little bit of rebuttal. NOKED came up here and he said that in psychology, women and children are isolated. They have no place to run or to hide. They might contemplate suicide, maybe have a breakdown, maybe have some kind of psychological imbalance. But that's why the state has social services. That's why the state has the police. That's why every single case except where there is a clear and immediate danger to the life of an individual, they can never take the law into their own hands. Because once you outsource justice, you are outsourcing the potential ability to have a fair trial and to make sure that the law is always upheld. Because the law, ladies and gentlemen, is blind. The law is a scale of justice which takes both sides into account and is decided by a judge and a jury, not by the victim. Number two, he uses this model of submission, don't believe, systematic abuse, stress for years. So under that same logic, under that same rationality, a man who is poor all of a sudden has a right to steal a loaf of bread? A man who has a video game addiction can all of a sudden steal video games to fulfill that addiction? A man who wants to rape because it is in his mind has a right to rape other women? Under this logic, that is what they are saying. If someone has a psychological imbalance, they are allowed to commit the crime that they are perpetrating. Go.
As defined by a medical doctor, in case...
Let me tell you how medical doctors work. Highly paid professionals are brought on for tens of thousands of dollars to certify a certain medical condition. Only 30 years ago, we were told that homosexuality was a mental disease. And every other kind of impetus that's brought before the law mitigates the law even from being carried out because the sentence is already carried out by the victim. As I said before, by POI, would we allow a victim of torture to conversely torture their torturer? No, because even the defendant has some rights and even has some protections under the law. And these protections are not guaranteed if the victim is given the right to carry out justice. Because what this is, ladies and gentlemen, is vigilante justice. Now, further going on into the murder trial point that Adini brought up by saying that there's circumstances of the event, the person, relationship, and individual factors, we usually take this into consideration. We are sentencing an individual. But evidence is usually not circumstantial. What it is in most murder cases and premeditated acts, you have to prove a series of events leading up into that event. And when we have this wayward psychological condition, which may be guaranteed under the DSM-4 right now, which is what we consider the standard for medical conditions, it's only been developed, and it may even be changed by years to come. If we accept this condition, we will accept the whole other lineage of conditions which will go against what the law should be. So point number one. This allows vigilantism. I was very clear on this in my rebuttal, but let me give you 3 instances of when it's okay to murder in the case of the victim. 1, in cases of insanity as proven by this. They didn't define this as insanity, and neither do medical professionals. This is a premeditated crime, not having the son of Sam saying that the dog is telling him to kill 17 other victims, but in the case that they have other options that they can go to. And just because they don't go to the other options does not make it legitimate for them to carry out the sentence themselves. Legitimacy is rested in actions. And murdering your partner because he beat you or she beat you is not a good enough reason to neglect the law. Because if the law has different standards for different individuals, except in extremely extreme cases, we can use this defense for a whole other litany of possible cases. All I have to do as a woman is say that my husband beat me. I don't have to prove it. And all I have to do is pay a medical professional $100,000. I'm not saying this is the majority of the cases, but it is an exception that we will not allow. There are other options that people should be able to face as opposed to allowing this as a condition for justice, which in and of itself is unjust. The second point that we have to bring up is mitigating and aggravating factors, which Ojai tried to touch on, but I'm going to develop further. Now, what we see in this is that when someone takes the law into their own hands, as I said in my rebuttal, it delegitimizes the law. Because when we pass a certain act, that act is passed with what's called mitigating and aggravating circumstances. Why was the murder committed? And only in cases of extreme infallibility, which essentially means that the person had no other option. The opposition said this is the case of a tortured prisoner behind bars. She still has to go to the supermarket. She still has to buy groceries. She still has to go see a doctor. She's still got to take her kids to school. There are too many exceptions and possibilities of them being able to report this to other parties to create an excuse for murder when there is an infinite amount of other possibilities. Just because they don't feel like it is not a reason for them not to do it. They are just as guilty as the batterer if they decide to take the law into their own hands. And third, the actor analysis. If a woman is beat, I am sorry for the crime committed against her. I empathize with the victim of that crime. But that is one crime, the abuse of that woman. When we escalate to a capital crime of murder, other conditions must entail. And what this is granting equal rights, not just to the one who beats, not just to the one who is beaten, but also to the one who beats. And by using a medical condition to pervert justice, this is just a perversion of the law itself. So maybe there is a medical condition, but it's not a good enough reason to plan a murder, take it out, when there is another litany of options that are available to the woman herself. I will not excuse murder, and I beg you to propose.